New Year, football fans. Welcome to the Football Game Plan NFL All-32 show. David Hassagen here, and with me, as always, the czar of the playbook, Emery Hunt. The 100th regular season of NFL football is over. The postseason field is set. And now the only question is, which of the 12 teams remaining will win the Lombardi Trophy? And Emery, there was no shortage of suspense in Week 17, to be sure.
I kind of like how the NFL did that, put all the games that truly mattered in that 4:25 window. Usually some are staggered. They usually start at 4 and some at 4:25. But it was funny to watch the games play out. And one thing that we noticed at Giants Stadium, or MetLife Stadium when I was covering the Giants game, is that they didn't update the score of the Cowboys-Redskins game.
Interesting.
They kept everyone in suspense. Obviously, everyone has their phone, but the sidelines were not watching the scoreboard. So I love what they did there. It went down to the wire. Even the 8 o'clock game went down to the last millimeter, literally on the goal line. So what a great way to cap off the 100 regular season.
An outstanding game, to be sure, on Sunday night, and we'll talk about all the teams that made it. But first, let's get into the 4-minute offense.
Hey guys, Jennifer Mariwega here, welcoming you back with your 4-minute offense. It's that time of year again, it's playoff time. But before we can hit the divisional round, we've got those 4 big games to look forward to this weekend, so let's get to it. The first big AFC wildcard game goes to us courtesy of the New England Patriots. Will the Patriots be fired up enough to defeat the Titans and make it to play the Chiefs again in the divisional round? The Patriots are 3-3 overall when in the wild card round, meaning their chance at Super Bowl appearance has severely decreased with that Florida loss. Going into this game, quarterback Tom Brady is continuing to fight off rumors of an injury that would explain his performance against the Dolphins. Next in the AFC is the Texans, who are favored to win over the Bills. But I wouldn't sleep on the Bills so quickly because they might just have the strength needed in their defensive team to beat Deshaun Watson. However, J.J. Watts' appearance will also be a big contributing factor to the outcome of this game and who will make it to the divisional round. Now over to the NFC, the Saints should have a relatively easier game against the Vikings with the stats on their side and an offense to be reckoned with. With their consistency and good numbers year after year, let's hope bad luck doesn't follow Breeze and the Saints into the playoffs this year too. Last but most definitely not least, even being away, the Seahawks should be able to get the W against the Eagles. Everyone loves a comeback, and that's exactly what Marshawn Lynch is looking to do. With only 1 game under his belt since coming back to the field, let's see what the Seahawks running game is going to look like this Sunday. That's it for me today. I'm Jennifer Mariwega, and I'll be seeing you next week.
Before we get into the wild card round previews, though, Emery, it's time to reflect on what was an unpredictable and sometimes a wild regular season. But what was your biggest takeaway from the regular season? Because there was a lot of things that we could point to here.
Coaching doing a great job of being coaches, because you saw a lot of major injuries. We talked about Ben Roethlisberger in Pittsburgh and what Mike Tomlin did to coach that football team up to get them on the precipice of a playoff appearance. We also look at what happened down there in Philadelphia with Peterson dealing with a lot of injuries every week. I'm talking about waves of depth chart, just overturning those guys, reaching to the practice squad, signing guys for that particular week, and having those guys ready to play. So we saw the coaching take precedent, I thought, this season, where guys had to make do with guys that they didn't have on the roster. Even someone like Adam Gase, who got his team ready to play toward the back end of the season. I think it was 6 wins out of 8 games.
6-2 in the end,
6-2 down the stretch with the musical chairs they had up front along the offensive line, with some of the injuries they had on the back end in the secondary. And they were dealt a huge blow going into the season when they're losing guys that were supposed to be prominent players on the roster. You talk about Chris Herndon getting hurt when he was coming back from suspension. You also look at C.J. Mosley getting hurt in the first game of the season and wasn't really the same since. So the coaching this year, I thought, was phenomenal. Guys were able to overcome the loss of key players.
I think for me, it was the story of the second chance quarterback. You look at Ryan Tannehill, who was just rejected from Miami. They pretty much kicked him out.
He earned his way out, though.
Earned his way out for sure, but it's become a life force for Tennessee. You talk about Jimmy Garoppolo, same thing. Really, people have been doubting him ever since New England said, you're not really the guy we thought you were. He's got the San Francisco team now, the number 1 seed in the NFC. So I think the second chance quarterback play, we already talked about how many backups and rookies and, all these guys that have never had a chance really, came up and stepped up in this year. Guys like David Blau, Devlin Hodges, obviously, Kyler Murray's, who looked really good this year, but it was the second chance quarterbacks I think were a great story this year in the NFL across the whole league.
I mean, you look at that 2015 class of quarterbacks, particularly two, Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota, two completely different seasons, but they both were intertwined because of how the season played out. We came into this year questioning whether or not they were the long-term answers for their franchises. We found out really early with Marcus Mariota, and now they're going to move on from him. Ryan Tannehill is playing himself into an extension. Jameis Winston had one of the more bizarre seasons ever. Yeah. 30 touchdown passes, 30 interceptions, over 5,100 yards passing, and you can legitimately be on both sides of the fence and say, you know what, he's a good player, but you can also say, like, man, they have to find someone better at the position, but
who and how?
Exactly, and how. And Jameis did his thing this season. He did his thing, but he also did his thing in the worst possible way.
And congratulations to Jameis Winston in getting the 30-30 mark in the most Jameis way possible, a pick six in overtime to make sure he got to the 30-30 mark. Makes you question things a little bit. But when we return, we will break down two intriguing matchups in the AFC wildcard round in Foxborough and Houston on the NFL All-32 show.
Be sure to order your copy of the Go-Go Offense by Coach Brennan Marion on footballgameplan.com/GoGoOffense. Coach Marion goes through the ins and outs of his explosive offense, one that's tearing up the college football field and putting a lot of points on the scoreboard. Again, you can order your copy at footballgameplan.com/GoGoOffense.
Welcome back to the NFL All-32 show. The AFC came down to a lot of crazy scenarios in Week 17, but the field is now set, and we have two great matchups. We start with the number 3 seed New England Patriots playing in the wild card round for the first time in a decade, facing a Tennessee Titans squad that has a lot of momentum and a lot of confidence. There's a lot of storylines here. We've got Tannehill, the former Dolphins quarterback, against New England. You've got Vrabel versus Belichick. What are the keys to victory for New England?
For the Patriots in this game, I think offensively it's about establishing the ground game. I know that's something that a lot of people don't want to hear, but you have to find ways to establish a run because it's time of possession. It's also wearing down a defensive front. The Titans want to get after it. They want to get aggressive. They want to get after the 40-plus-year-old Tom Brady in the pocket. But if you're in New England, you counterbalance that by running the football. So I think establishing the run is key. Defensively, it's about making plays in space. We saw what Ryan Tannehill has meant for this offense, getting the ball out to A.J. Brown, who has quietly played himself into the Rookie of the Year, in my opinion, Offensive Rookie of the Year at least. And you talk about a guy that does a great job after the catch. So making plays in space versus him, versus Derrick Henry, who is the NFL leading rusher, right? For the regular season. Making those plays in space. If they can do that, they have a chance.
And this is a New England Patriots team that has been notoriously weak this year on offense. What about Tennessee, though? This is a team that people had kind of forgotten about by about Week 6 or so. They've come on very, very strong since the quarterback changed to Ryan Tannehill. What are the keys to them to beat New England here on the road?
I think number one is to not get enamored by the logo on the helmet, the guy standing on the other sideline. Play Tennessee Titans football. Don't get caught up in we're playing Belichick, we're playing Brady, we're playing the New England Patriots in Foxborough. Forget all of that. Here's what you have. Here's what we're good at. Here's what we're going to go in and try to accomplish. Treat them like no other team. Treat them like every other team, in the NFL. If you can go in there and play the game versus the next opponent and not treat it as you're playing a game versus the New England Patriots and overcoach yourself or outcoach your own self, you'll be fine. So just play your game. Don't worry about who you're playing against. And I think another big key for Tennessee would be to maximize the talent that you have. You have opportunities in the passing game with Lewis, the running back. You also have your ability to stretch out that defense and attack the inside of that defense with Jonnu Smith, a tight end, A.J. Brown, the big receiver. You also have other receivers that you can get the football to. So they have options, and they also have an athletic quarterback, which we have seen gives Bill Belichick's problems.
Now, who are the X factors in this ball game? Because obviously, normal X factor we talk about right now is Rob Gronkowski. Patriots haven't had him all year. They've really struggled at the skill position. So who are the X factors for both teams?
I think for New England, it's Sony Michel. Run game has to be prevalent. They have to get the best out of Sony Michel in this matchup. And I think for for Tennessee, it's Ryan Tannehill. I think everyone is kind of waiting for him to turn back into a pumpkin. It hasn't happened yet. You hope that doesn't happen in this ball game. You hope in his first playoff appearance as a starting quarterback, he owns the opportunity and makes it happen.
Who do you like in this ball game and why?
I like Tennessee, man. I think Tennessee's defense can match up well versus New England. The offense isn't the best that we've seen of New England, so I think their defense will cause some problems. They also turn the ball over. Kevin Byard is a great player that can take the ball away. Vaccaro is a versatile move piece that can get after the quarterback. I like him as well. I like what they're getting now from FCS undrafted rookie free agent Derek Roberson from Sam Houston State, who has just found sacks every game that he's now been in the starting lineup. And offensively, Ryan Tannehill, being an athlete, finding guys off script is going to be key. I like Tennessee to win this game.
Don't underestimate, though, the mystique of Foxborough in January. That is the only warning I will give you. Meanwhile, in the other matchup, we have the AFC South champions, the Houston Texans, taking on the Buffalo Bills. They returned for the second time in 3 years to the postseason after what was a long drought before then, so they've shown some progress. But this Houston offense will have a lot of problems. What are the keys to breaking through that Buffalo defense, which has been huge for them?
Tight end play. I love what I'm seeing for Jordan Akins, the outstanding tight end, and that opens up things on the outside. I know a lot of people talk about Will Fuller and what he can do deep down the field, but the tight end play, I think, is going to be integral in what they do offensively, because it's going to take one of those safeties away, force one of those safeties to focus on Akins in the passing game, which allows you to go deep down the field. I know you could focus on a run game as well, but let's talk about Akins in that tight end position. I think that's going to be key for Houston. That's number one. Defensively, getting after Josh Allen, closing the door on him. You're facing a guy that's very similar athletically to the one you have in Deshaun Watson. If you can keep Allen in the pocket, force him to play a passing game, that heavily favors Houston.
So obviously for Buffalo, then, the key is just let Josh Allen be Josh Allen.
Yeah, you want to let Josh Allen be Josh Allen, dance with the person that you brought to the party, and that's his athleticism. So you can spread the field, sometimes maybe even go empty, putting a lot of strain on that defense because they can't really pressure him because he can take off and run. So you have to let him be Josh Allen. Don't try to turn him into Dan Marino or something like that in this ball game. But if you're Josh Allen, you have to play your best, most efficient game. Just like we saw him hit that deep ball to the tight end Knox in a game against New England, that has to be consistent. He has to connect on those deep passes.
So who are your X factors in this ball game?
I think defensively for Buffalo, Ed Oliver and what he does on the interior. Interior pressure kills any spread offense. And I think if he can be a detriment to team success because of how he's getting in the backfield, he could be huge in this ball game, a huge X factor for Houston, whoever's going to be the starting running back. So whatever running back you're going to lean on the most in this ball game has to be the forefront. He has to be the guy that can really wear down that defensive line of Buffalo and keep the balance for offensively for Houston. So I would say the run game has to be the X factor.
Now the real question, who takes home this win?
Houston. I think Houston, because they have the ability to pass football. Deshaun Watson is a difference maker. He's a true dual threat that you can count on. That reason alone, I'm going with Houston.
At least I will say this for Buffalo, at least they're not playing at home because they would have to pack at least 3 or 4 more layers of clothing in order to play in Buffalo in January. They'll be happy to be in Houston.
Maybe next year.
Maybe next season.
I'm Alex Marinoni, offering you Football Game Plan's best bets for Wild Card Weekend. We focus on the AFC, where we have 2 great games ahead of us, featuring the best of the AFC South and the AFC East. We start in Houston, where the Texans will play host to the Buffalo Bills. A great matchup between the number 3 defense in football in Buffalo and one of the most dynamic playmakers in football in Deshaun Watson. Both teams have had the luxury of being able to rest a lot of players in Week 17, so everyone should be ready to go come Saturday. One player in particular who will be ready is J.J. Watt. Watt is expected to make his return this week, which should absolutely provide a boost to this Texans defense. The Bills don't have a dynamic offense, but they are an offense that limits their mistakes. Averaging less than 20 points per game and going on the road against a team getting their best player back should be tough sledding for Buffalo, though. On the flip side, Buffalo's defense has been the strength all year and is a team that can turn the ball over against a quarterback that likes to take chances. Weather won't be a factor, but I do expect a low-scoring affair. Seeing the line at 41.5, I could see both teams struggling to get there. This game has the makes of a 21-17-like finish. The best bet here would take the under. In our nightcap, we have the Tennessee Titans going into New England to take on the Patriots. A lot of great storylines coming into this one. Mike Vrabel coming back to New England, Ryan Tannehill coming off the bench to turn the Titans season around, the Patriots playing a wild card weekend game. From Tennessee's side, Vrabel has done an excellent job this year. The Titans come in as one of the hottest teams in the NFL and one of the most dangerous rushing attacks in the league. Their quarterback is an ex-AFC East quarterback who has had success against New England in the past and is well aware of what it takes to play in Foxborough. Lastly, Mike Vrabel knows more than anybody, both as a player and a coach, what it takes to play and win in New England. On the flip side, this is the playoffs, this is Foxborough, and this is Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. The offense isn't the machine that it once was, but don't count out what New England is capable of. Expect this game to be very close and very low scoring. There are two bets I like here, the under and the Titans spread. The over-under sits at 43.5, and I definitely like New England's #1 defense and Mike Vrabel's coach defense to keep the score low. And I like the Titans' 5.5 spread here to cover. This game will come down to at least a field goal. For Football Game Plan's Best Bets, I'm Alex Marinoni.
Troy Anthony, bringing you the Football Game Plan Best Bets for the Wild Card Weekend, NFC Edition. In the first matchup, we have the 1 o'clock game with the #3 seed New Orleans Saints sitting at 13-3, taking on the 6 seed Minnesota Vikings at 10-6. There's definitely some history between these two teams. We remember a few years back, the miracle in Minneapolis, when Diggs took that catch all the way to the house in the final seconds. Both of these teams have explosive offensives this season, and they have defenses that can truly shut you down. New Orleans can put up 30 points. Kirk Cousins can have 3 touchdowns to Diggs or Thielen. This is going to be a good game. I like Minnesota with the spread in this one, +8 at -110. In the next matchup, we have the #4 seed, the Philadelphia Eagles, at 9-7, taking on that 5 seed, the Seattle Seahawks, at 11-5. This game is at 440. Now, this one is a game where both teams, they seem to become electric in the fourth quarter. This can be a 7-7 game and end up being a 21-28 game, all in the fourth quarter. Russell Wilson is clutch. He's been here before. The Eagles have been here before in the playoffs as well. Not necessarily Carson Wentz, but still, this should definitely be a good one. I like the Seattle Seahawks with the spread here at -2. With your Football Game Plan Best Bets for the Wild Card Weekend, NFC Edition, I'm Troy Anthony.
Welcome back, fans. Whereas in the AFC, we had drama over who would make the postseason, in the NFC, it was a war for seeding. But with the dust settled, we start with the #3 seed New Orleans Saints hosting the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota has quietly been impressive this season, but how will they get the win in this one against a Saints team that has an explosive offense of their own?
Their running game has to be prevalent. If we don't see the Vikings run game, that outside zone game that has been a big reason why their offense has had a lot of success, it could struggle because that could put a lot of pressure on Kirk Cousins to beat Drew Brees in this ball game. And although they have the weapons to push the pace and have success against the Saints secondary, if they can't run the football with whomever's going to be back there healthy at the tailback position, it could be an issue.
What about for New Orleans, though? Because obviously, defensively, they've had some question marks here and there, but offensively, we know they're solid. Kirk Cousins is still not someone they can overlook.
Well, and that's the thing. If they can't make the plays that are there to be made, Kirk Cousins is going to give you a couple opportunities to either sack him or pick the ball off. The Saints have to capitalize on that opportunity, on those opportunities. That's why I think Demario Davis will play a huge role. If I had to pick an X factor right now, Saints linebacker Demario Davis has been a godsend for that defense. He's going to have to play big in this ball game. And let's say for Minnesota, the biggest X factor, I think you look at the tight end position. Rudolph, Irv Smith, those guys taking advantage of the Saints' safeties could be a way for them to have some success.
And the biggest thing for Minnesota, does Kirk Cousins show up like he has normally during the regular season? Or does primetime Kirk Cousins show up? Because if it's primetime Kirk Cousins, we've shown that he's struggled with the bright lights on him. With that being said, who wins the Superdome?
You know what? This will be a closer game than people think because the Vikings' defense is really good and they do a great job at all 3 levels. With that being said, I like what I've seen from the Saints offense the last couple of weeks. I had some questions about their offense and their ability to be dynamic outside of Michael Thomas. We're starting to see Jared Cook make one-handed catches and make plays. Kamara's starting to become that threat that he should have been earlier in the season. So I kind of like the Saints to overcome some defensive play for Minnesota. I like New Orleans.
Let's move into the other matchup here. The #4 seed, the Philadelphia Eagles, the survivors of the NFC East. We can kind of call them champions, but they face the #5 seed, Seattle Seahawks. Philly's found a way through the championship through a multitude of injuries at almost every major position, but now they get an advanced test against a very tough team from the West.
You know what's interesting about this game is that I think a lot of the injuries that we talk about have been on the offensive side of the football for Philadelphia, but defensively they've been fairly healthy throughout the season. I think that's a big reason why they are here. Their defense does a great job. Fletcher Cox is phenomenal in applying pressure. They swarm to the football. Their secondary at times can show that they are competent and overcome ineffective play. So I think defensively they can cause some problems for Seattle because Seattle's offense just doesn't look in sync. You still don't know what identity they are or what they are as an offense. So I think the defense for Philadelphia, getting those early stops in the ball game will be huge. Offensively, can Carson Wentz continue to elevate the guys around him and get those guys involved? We don't know if Miles Sanders will be healthy enough to play. If he does, that's great. If not, we saw Boston Scott do a great job, but I think it'll be more onus on the passing game, the short passing game, screen game. If they can do that, they can have a chance.
And as you said with Seattle, their offense not exactly overwhelming in terms of that, and they've had more injuries on the defensive side of the ball.
Right, and now they're looking at a backfield that has Marshawn Lynch, who looked okay in his first game back, getting his sea legs underneath, and you expect that to happen. But offensively, can they find success in the passing game consistently? We saw them in the last 2 minutes of the game do that. I still feel as though sometimes Russell Wilson holds the football a little bit too long. I think that has to change in this ball game. He has to be a little bit more confident back there in what he's seeing and not wait to go scramble drill and then find someone deep down the field. The passing game has to be precise in this one if they want to have a chance. Defensively, it's about taking away the tight ends. You take away the tight end, Dallas Goedert, Zach Ertz, whoever the tight end will be, take away the tight end, make Wentz go to those receiving options consistently. That's how you win this ball game.
You mentioned Marshawn Lynch. Is he the X factor for Seattle? And who's your X factor for Philadelphia?
I think the X factor for Seattle will have to be the offensive line. The entire unit has to find ways to create opportunities to run the football despite not having the depth that they had earlier in the season. For Philadelphia, I think the biggest X factor will be the receiving core because you would expect Seattle to take away the tight end, force Wentz to go outside. So you're talking about Greg Ward. You're talking about all of these other guys stepping up and making plays for Carson Wentz. More so, in my opinion, than the backfield. Those receivers have to have an encore performance against Seattle.
Now the big question, who takes home the victory in the city of brotherly love?
I think this is actually a coin flip game, to be honest. It's not as easy as it may appear. I do like the playoff experience of Russell Wilson and the scrambling ability of Wilson. I think he's more apt to scramble. We haven't really seen Wentz do it, although he can. I wish he would do it more. But I like Seattle in a very close one against Philadelphia.
That will do it for the Football Game Plan NFL All-32 show. Don't forget, for all your football knowledge, go to footballgameplan.com, where football makes sense. You can go to SoundCloud or iTunes, where you can listen to the NFL All-32 podcast with myself, Emery, Troy, and Alex, talking about all the buzz across the NFL as we prepare you for the postseason. For the czar of the playbook, Emery Hunt, I'm David Hassagen saying have a great weekend and enjoy the wild card round.